Have you ever caught yourself battling thoughts that seem to come out of nowhere? Anxiety over things you can't control, regret over what's already passed, fear about a future that hasn't even happened yet. If so, you're not alone. Most of us live not in the world as it is, but in the world as it exists inside our minds. We walk through our days physically present but mentally lost, overthinking, underliving, and wondering why we feel so disconnected. The truth is, we've been trained to focus on the external. We obsess over status, opinions, outcomes. We try to fix the outside world, believing that if we just get that one job, that one relationship, or that one break, everything will finally click into place. But what if the problem and the solution was never out there to begin with? What if the real war was being fought within you, right now, in every moment, with every thought you allow to live rent-free in your mind? This idea isn't new. It's ancient. It's Stoic. Thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca knew that the mind was the true arena of power. They lived in a world filled with war, slavery, loss, and political instability, and yet they discovered something unshakable. If you could master your internal world, nothing external could break you. They taught that the mind is not just a tool, it's the front line, and every day you wake up on the battlefield. That's what this video is about. Not just motivation for the moment, but mental discipline for a lifetime. We're going to unpack the principles of ancient Stoicism and combine them with modern psychological techniques so you can actually apply them. This isn't about sounding smart. This is about getting free from overthinking, from emotional reactivity, from fear, from helplessness. We're here to build a mindset that holds steady in chaos and a spirit that doesn't break when life throws its worst. So if you're someone who's tired of being controlled by doubt, if you're done letting other people's opinions decide your mood, if you're ready to stop being reactive and start being resilient, then stay with me. Because what you're going to learn here isn't abstract theory. It's practical, powerful, and it works. And more importantly, it's yours to use, starting today. But before we dive into this transformation, I need you to do one thing. Hit that subscribe button. Not because it helps the algorithm, but because it's a declaration. You're saying, I'm done living by default. I choose to live by design. Subscribing means you're committing to mastering your inner world, one lesson, one thought, one action at a time. Because here's the reality. If you don't take control of your mind, something else will. Fear will. Insecurity will. The expectations of other people will. That's why you must become the commander of your own thoughts, not their captive. And you don't need a perfect past, a fancy degree, or the approval of anyone to start. You just need awareness, willingness, and discipline. By the time you finish this video, you'll have tools to not only identify the traps of your mind, but to break free from them. You'll stop mistaking noise for truth. You'll stop giving power to what doesn't deserve it. And most importantly, you'll begin to see your life not as something happening to you, but something being built by you. This is not easy. It's not passive. It's not quick, but it is real. And if you're willing to step up, take ownership, and put in the mental reps, then you can transform, not overnight, not by magic, but by philosophy turned into practice. That's what the Stoics did. That's what this moment invites you to do. Master the mind, win the war, and finally, live with power. 1. The mind is the real battlefield. The ancient Stoics were warriors, not always with swords, but with their minds. They understood something most people today still don't, that the most important war we will ever fight isn't in the streets, in politics, or in competition with others. It's in the silence of our own thoughts. Every day, without exception, you wake up and enter a battlefield, and the opponent is your mind, your fears, your doubts, your insecurities, and they don't take days off. Think about it. How many times have you talked yourself out of doing something meaningful just because of a thought, a what if, a worst case scenario, a past failure whispering that you'll mess it up again? How many times have you woken up feeling defeated before the day even begins? The war isn't out there, it's in here. And until you learn to face it, no amount of external success will bring you peace. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and a Stoic philosopher, wrote in his journal, not for the world, but for himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That quote isn't just poetic, it's surgical, because most people give all their energy to the outside, the news, other people's drama, the things they can't control. But the Stoic doesn't waste that energy. He saves it for the real fight, the one within. This inner war is about more than just resisting negativity. It's about mastering focus, because your mind is always paying attention to something. And whatever you give it will grow. Feed it fear, that fear multiplies. Feed it purpose, that purpose starts to shape your life. Every moment you are programming your mind with what you allow it to dwell on. So the question isn't, are you fighting? The question is, are you winning? One of the most damaging myths in modern life is that we can coast through it on autopilot. But you can't live consciously while thinking unconsciously. That's like trying to steer a ship while sleeping at the wheel. You crash, you burn, and then you blame the ocean. But the truth is, we must wake up. We must become active participants in our thought life. Because if we don't challenge our inner dialogue, it becomes our dictator. Look at high performers, leaders, athletes, philosophers, warriors. They all understand this battle. The difference isn't in their talent. It's in how they manage their internal chaos. They face the same voices of doubt and fear, but they don't surrender. They train, they question their thoughts, they focus on what matters, they turn adversity into fuel. And that's not luck, it's mastery. But here's the thing. You don't need to be a philosopher or a general to apply this. You just need to decide that your inner world matters. That what you believe, what you repeat, what you reinforce inside your head is either building you or breaking you. You must choose, because until you master your mind will master you. Now, don't misunderstand. This isn't about never having bad thoughts. It's about not letting them run your life. It's not about pretending everything's okay. It's about facing what isn't and not flinching. The Stoic mindset says, I may not control what thoughts appear, but I can control which ones I entertain, believe, and act on. That, right there, is freedom. Not the kind the world gives, the kind no one can take away. So start today. Become the observer of your thoughts. Don't react, reflect. Don't absorb, assess. Don't suppress, strategize. You are not your fears. You are not your failures. You are the awareness behind them. And once you start leading your mind, instead of following it, you step into a level of power that most people never reach. Because in the end, the mind is the cause, and the life is the effect. Master the cause, and the effect will take care of itself. That's why the battlefield of the mind isn't just a metaphor, it's the most important war you will ever face. And if you have the courage to fight it, you'll realize something extraordinary. You were never the enemy, you just hadn't met the warrior inside you yet. 2. Learn the line, what you can control. One of the most freeing truths you can ever learn is this: some things are within your control and some things are not. As simple as that sounds, most people live in complete defiance of it. They spend their energy worrying about how others perceive them, stressing over outcomes they can't dictate, or trying to rewrite the past through regret. But the Stoics drew a clear line through life, between what's up to us and what isn't. That line is everything. It's the path to peace, the key to power, and the root of resilience. Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic teachers, said it plainly: some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, property, reputation, command, and, in one word, whatever are not our own actions. That list might not match modern terminology, but the principle stands untouched. The thoughts you hold, the words you speak, the effort you put in, those are yours. Everything else? That's the wind. Learn the line. Respect the boundary. The problem is that most people blur that line every day. When you try to control what others think of you, you've crossed the line. When you base your happiness on how perfectly your plans unfold, you've crossed the line. When your peace depends on whether or not the world is fair, you've crossed the line. And when you live beyond that line, you will suffer, not because life is cruel, but because your expectations are unrealistic. You've handed your emotions to forces that don't answer to you. Imagine standing at the ocean's edge, shouting at the tide to stop. That's what it's like when you try to control external events. You're screaming at the waves, but if instead you focus on how you build your boat, how you navigate, how you respond, you'll survive storms that destroy others. That's the Stoic advantage. It's not about controlling the world. It's about commanding yourself no matter what the world does. But here's what's beautiful. Once you accept what's not yours to control, you reclaim all the energy you were wasting. You stop being a puppet pulled by emotions that rise from external chaos. You stop being a victim of circumstances. You stop trying to predict the future and start preparing for it. You start living from the inside out. You become centered, grounded, not because the world got easier, but because your mindset got sharper. This doesn't mean you become passive. Far from it. Stoicism is not about apathy. It's about precision. You show up, you act, you give your best. But once your role ends, you let go. You detach from the outcome not because it doesn't matter, but because it's not yours to carry. The moment you release attachment to results, you gain access to peace and power most people never find. Modern psychology echoes this. In cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the first steps in managing anxiety is identifying what's within your control. The overlap with Stoicism isn't accidental. Both philosophies understand that mental health begins with clarity. When you know what's yours to own, you stop wasting mental bandwidth on what isn't. And that clarity? That's the beginning of real strength. So ask yourself, where are you pouring energy into what you can't control? Is it into the past? The opinions of others? The news? Let that go. It doesn't mean you're indifferent. It means you're strategic. You don't ignore problems. You just stop treating problems outside your influence as if they were yours to fix. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. When you focus only on what you can influence, something incredible happens. Your power increases. Your decisions improve. Your confidence grows. You begin to trust yourself, not because things always go right, but because you know you'll respond with clarity no matter how they go. That's how unshakable people are built, not by controlling life, but by mastering their role in it. So draw the line today, not in arrogance, but in awareness. Let go of what was never yours to carry. Reclaim what always was, your thoughts, your actions, your responses, your discipline. That is where your freedom lives. That is where your transformation begins. Learn the line, and you'll stop drowning in chaos and start walking in calm no matter what surrounds you. 3. Train the mind, practical mental tools. Mastering the mind is not a one-time event. It's a daily discipline. Just like you train your body with consistent reps, sets, and routines, the mind also demands repetition and structure. If you neglect your physical health, your body weakens. And if you neglect your mental practices, your mindset decays. That's why the Stoics didn't just reflect, they practiced. They built mental habits like a warrior builds muscle. They treated philosophy not as an idea to admire, but as a craft to train. The modern world often talks about self-help and self-improvement, but without tools, all we're left with are slogans. You can't just tell yourself to be calm. You have to train yourself to stay calm. You can't just say, be resilient. You need to condition your mind to see adversity differently. That's why Stoicism remains so relevant today. It gives us tools, exercises, routines, things we can do, not just things we can think about. One of the most powerful tools in the Stoic toolkit is the practice of negative visualization. Imagine losing what you take for granted, your home, your job, your loved ones. Not to scare yourself, but to awaken gratitude and prepare for the worst. Seneca once said, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." This mental rehearsal doesn't make you pessimistic, it makes you prepared. When reality doesn't shock you, you remain composed. When your happiness isn't fragile, it can't be stolen. Another tool is questioning your thoughts. Epictetus taught that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Our minds jump to conclusions, spin worst-case scenarios, and lie to us about what's really happening. So, when you catch yourself spiraling into anxiety or self-doubt, pause and interrogate the thought. Ask, is this true? Is this useful? What's the evidence? When you start auditing your mind like this, you stop being a prisoner of every passing thought. Journaling, another timeless practice, is like strength training for the soul. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his meditations not to impress others, but to sharpen himself. Every morning or evening, you can write out your fears, reflect on your behaviors, or clarify your values. Journaling makes the invisible visible. It creates awareness. And awareness is the first step to self-command. The act of writing is the act of confronting your thoughts, your ego, your patterns. Reframing adversity is another crucial mental skill. When life hits you hard, and it will, the Stoic doesn't ask, "Why me?" They ask, "What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this?" Adversity becomes training. Setbacks become teachers. Pain becomes fuel. The Stoic mindset sees everything as raw material for growth. You're not being punished, you're being sharpened. Your perspective becomes your superpower. And when you change the frame, you change the meaning. Breath control and mindfulness also belong in your mental gym. A few deep, controlled breaths in the middle of a stressful situation can change your body's chemistry. The Stoics may not have had neuroscience, but they had discipline. They practiced being present, they paid attention. They knew that clarity is impossible when the mind is racing, so they trained it to slow down, to reflect, to return to what they could control, and let go of what they couldn't. These tools align perfectly with modern cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Today's psychologists use these same strategies: thought challenging, exposure to fears, reframing beliefs, journaling for clarity. What the Stoics taught thousands of years ago is now validated by clinical science. That's not coincidence, it's truth rediscovered. And it means these methods are not just ancient, they're proven. But here's the truth. None of these tools matter if you don't use them. Insight without action is just information. Strength comes not from what you know, but from what you practice. So make these tools a part of your routine. Start small, one new habit at a time. Write in a journal for 5 minutes. Question 1, negative thought a day. Visualize one scenario you fear and mentally rehearse how you'd handle it with grace. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being prepared. It's about building a mental operating system that doesn't crash when life gets tough. Because life will get tough. The question is, will you break with it, or will you bend and bounce back? That answer depends on your training. So train now. Train often. Train like your life depends on it. because the quality of your life truly does. 4. Real power comes from self-mastery. We live in a world obsessed with power. Power over others, power through status, power through money and recognition. But ask yourself honestly, if your emotions control you, if your impulses steer you, if the smallest insult or inconvenience can throw off your entire day, how much power do you really have? The Stoics had a different definition of power. For them, true power wasn't about ruling others, it was about ruling yourself. It was about self-mastery. Self-mastery is the ability to choose your response instead of being dragged by reaction. It's what separates the person who panics from the person who plans, the one who breaks down from the one who breaks through. And let's be clear, self-mastery isn't suppression. It's not pretending you don't feel emotions. It's recognizing them without being ruled by them. It's feeling deeply, but responding wisely. Power in this sense is internal. It doesn't shout, it doesn't prove. It simply is. The man who can govern himself doesn't need to dominate others. He doesn't chase validation because he's not dependent on the world's applause. He doesn't fear rejection because his worth isn't up for debate. He doesn't need to be constantly entertained because he's not running from himself. That's what real freedom looks like. Not the absence of difficulty, but the absence of self-inflicted chaos. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing, no matter what happens outside, I remain centered inside. Marcus Aurelius could have lived like a god. He was emperor of Rome. Yet, in his private writings, he constantly reminded himself to stay humble, to stay calm, to control his mind and actions. He knew the real battle wasn't in politics or warfare, it was within. And if a man with that much power reminded himself to stay disciplined, what excuse do we have? If he trained himself not to be consumed by pride or fear, how much more? Should we? Self-mastery isn't natural, it goes against our biology. Our brain is wired for survival, not serenity. It reacts, it overthinks, it panics. But that's why it must be trained. Just like a soldier isn't born with discipline, they develop it. Just like a musician isn't born with skill, they practice it. The same goes for your inner world. If you want to be emotionally strong, mentally calm, spiritually grounded, it won't happen by accident. You have to build it. One habit, one choice, one moment at a time. In everyday life, self-mastery looks like pausing before you speak. It looks like refusing to be baited into meaningless arguments. It looks like going to the gym when you don't feel like it. It looks like being kind when it would be easier to be bitter. It's walking away from drama, not because you're weak, but because you've got better things to protect. Your energy, your focus, your peace. Mastery is subtle. Most won't notice it, but you'll feel it, and that's what matters. There's a hidden power in consistency. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you reinforce your inner strength. Every time you choose humility over ego, you sharpen your wisdom. Every time you choose silence over unnecessary noise, you grow in clarity. These aren't glamorous wins. You won't get applause for them. But they compound. Over time, they turn into character. And character? That's the bedrock of an unshakable life. Don't fall for the myth that power comes from being loud, aggressive, or dominant. That's performance, not power. Real power is still. It doesn't panic. It doesn't need an audience. It acts with intention. It leads without controlling. When you operate from that place, when your actions are driven by values, not urges, you become untouchable in the best way. Life will test you, yes, but your response will be your strength. And here's the truth. The more you master yourself, the less you need to control others. The more you accept responsibility for your thoughts and actions, the less blame you project onto the world. That shift from victim to leader, from reactor to responder, is what transforms your life. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. So if you want to live with real power, stop waiting for the world to hand it to you. Build it, earn it, practice it every single day. You don't need a title, a trophy, or anyone's permission. You just need commitment to be better than you were yesterday. Not perfect, just disciplined, just clear, just intentional. Because self-mastery isn't about controlling everything. It's about controlling yourself in everything. 5. Integration, living from the inside out. Everything we've discussed, mental clarity, the dichotomy of control, practical mental exercises, and self-mastery, leads to this: integration. Not just knowing these ideas, but living them. The final evolution of a Stoic mind isn't someone who quotes Marcus Aurelius or journals every now and then. It's someone who walks through life from the inside out, governed not by impulse, but by principle. Someone who doesn't just talk about discipline, but embodies it in how they speak, how they work, how they respond to the world. The truth is, wisdom that stays in the mind is wasted. Philosophy that doesn't guide your actions is just decoration. The Stoics believed that the greatest proof of philosophy wasn't how well you could explain it, but how well you could live it. And that's what integration means. It's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent. It's about aligning your inner beliefs with your outer behavior. And that, right there, is where transformation happens. Living from the inside out means you no longer rely on circumstances to define your mood. You don't let traffic make you angry. You don't let someone else's opinion ruin your peace. You don't wait for motivation to take action. Instead, you live by a compass you've built within. And because it's internal, nothing external can destroy it. Your mindset becomes the source, not the reaction. Your character becomes the driver, not the passenger. But integration also means accepting that you will fall short sometimes. You'll snap when you meant to stay calm. You'll overthink when you meant to stay grounded. That doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human. What matters is how you respond. Do you let shame rule you? Or do you use that moment as fuel for awareness, learning, and recommitment? That's Stoicism too, not perfection but progress guided by principle. One of the best ways to measure integration is to observe how you respond under pressure. When things go wrong, do you panic, blame, react blindly, or do you pause, reflect, act with intention? Stoicism isn't measured when things are calm. It's measured when life punches you in the mouth. The goal is not to feel nothing, but to feel everything without being owned by it. That's living from the inside out. That's being your own anchor in any storm. This way of living creates trust, not just with others, but with yourself. You start to know who you are and what you stand for. And when you know that, you stop chasing empty distractions. You stop needing approval from people who don't even know you. You stop looking outward for what you can only cultivate inward: peace, confidence, clarity. You become, in the deepest sense, self-led, not self-absorbed, self-led. And that kind of person is rare. That kind of person stands out, not because they're loud, but because they're grounded. They don't flinch at chaos. They don't collapse under pressure. They carry themselves with quiet strength. And people feel it, even if they can't explain it. That presence, that integrity, it comes from integration. From living by inner standards instead of outer noise. So how do you start living this way? Not by waiting for the perfect moment, but by starting where you are, with what you know. Apply one principle today. Reflect every evening. Catch yourself when you slip, and gently course correct. This is a lifestyle, not a weekend project, a lifelong refinement, not a one-time decision. You become what you practice, so practice deliberately, practice consciously, practice with heart. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how loud the world gets if your mind is trained to be quiet. It doesn't matter what you face on the outside if your values stand strong on the inside. And it doesn't matter how far you still have to go if your direction is clear. That's the gift of Stoicism. It gives you the tools to build your life from the inside out. And when you do, you don't just survive. You lead, you grow, and you become unshakable. The war is daily, so is the victory. If there's one truth you carry with you from this message, let it be this: the war is never over. You don't master the mind once and walk away crowned. You fight for your clarity, your discipline, your peace every single day. Some days you win with grace. Some days you fight through the mud, but every day the battle shows up. And so must you. This isn't a journey of arrival. It's a lifestyle of resilience. There is no final point where adversity stops, where your emotions never stir, or where life becomes easy. But there is a point where you stop being shaken by it all, where your response becomes stronger than the storm, where your values become louder than the noise. And that's what Stoicism prepares you for, not to avoid the chaos, but to lead yourself through it. You don't need to be a philosopher to live with wisdom. You don't need to be a monk to find peace. You don't need to wait for the world to change before you do. The real victory is internal, and it begins when you stop running from the mind and start mastering it. No matter how loud the world gets, your stillness can be louder. No matter how dark the moment feels, your discipline can be your light. So keep training, keep refining, keep choosing to act with intention when it would be easier to react with emotion. Keep standing tall, not because life is easy, but because you are centered. The war is daily, yes, but so is the victory. And with each quiet win, each mindful breath, each wise response, you build a life that no storm can destroy. If this message reached you, if it woke something up in you, don't let it fade. Subscribe, rewatch, reflect, apply. Let this be more than a motivational video. Let it be the beginning of a new way of living, not louder, not busier, just stronger, clearer, and unshakably you.